Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast. The show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and I am so excited because today we are finally covering one of my absolute favourite animals of all time. As you may know, this series we are celebrating all things Africa. And so there is no better time than this to celebrate the wonderful, the magical, the incredibly enchanting world of the Okapi. I'm so excited. To do that, I am joined by the absolutely wonderful Lucas Meers, who works for the Okapi Conservation Project as their program officer. We chat about what an Okapi is, some of the weird and wonderful traits, of which there are many, which help the Okapi survive and thrive in their forest home, and how this incredible organisation is trying to protect these creatures with agroforestry projects, education programmes, and by better understanding emerging threats such as poaching. On top of all of that, we also chat about how Lucas found himself working for such an incredible organisation. We talk about the incredible diversity of life which can be found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. When you hear how many butterflies there are, your mind will be blown. We talk about Okapi poo. We talk about all sorts of weird stuff. And we also talk, on top of all of that, about one of Lucas's other favourite underappreciated species, the sea turtle. So we really pack a lot in for you today. So, without further ado, let's get started. And welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Lucas Meers, the Programme Officer for the Okapi Conservation Project. He's here to tell us all about one of my, admittedly, I know I shouldn't have favourites, one of my absolute favourite, most wonderful animals, the Okapi. So thank you so much for joining me today, Lucas. Thank you so much.
No problem, Jack. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to speak about one of my favorite animals as well.
I was going to say it's an easy pick for you. I have to play I have to try and at least remain slightly neutral. You're allowed to be really one-sided. But yeah, it's my favorite. But no, I guess we'll get onto that wonderful creature in a second. Before we do, though, I always like to ask, just so people know who they're listening to.
Mhm.
I've given you a very brief introduction there, just with a job title. Is there anything you feel the listeners should know about you? Tell us a little bit about you as a person so they know, who you are.
I've always grown up loving nature and animals,
Mhm.
and I've always been an animal nature person. Playing in the creek in my backyard that led to a degree in biology and marine science,
Mhm.
and then that led to a job at a zoo, which eventually led to a job in conserving okapi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's kind of a twisty, turny story how I got there, but it all kind of happened very naturally. And I absolutely love where I am. I'm based in Florida in the United States, and we have staff in the Democratic Republic of Congo in and around the Okapi Wildlife Reserve. And so we work to protect the endangered okapi over there by working closely with the government officials, the ICCN Eco Guards, who patrol and protect the forest. And we work very closely with communities, building a very strong level of community trust by supporting them and incorporating a level of conservation education surrounded on protecting the rainforest habitat of okapi.
That's a perfect answer. It's like the perfect answer where you're like, here's a little bit about me, here's a little bit about the thing, and like it's like perfect, nail on
I
the head
always give a
stuff.
little bit more.
No, it's perfect. And it's like, it's opened the door to so many more questions that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I think listeners should be prepared. You have mentioned you are a zoo person. I am
Mm-hmm.
also a zoo person, and zoo
Mm-hmm.
people tend to have a problem with rambling, but we promise listeners we will try our best.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm
And
really good at
yes,
tangents.
Oh, 100%. People come to the zoo
Hmm.
and they don't spend half their time looking at the animals. The other half is just me talking to them. That's the
Hmm.
the way it usually works. Um,
Ramblers are those that are most passionate about their subject because they can talk about
hmm
it for forever. And so I like
hmm
to think about it that way. That's why I'm a rambler and go on tangents because I'm really passionate.
I love that. I'm going to use that as a justification from now on. When people say like, Jack, you need to be more concise. I'm like, nope, never, never, ever, ever.
You got to share that
Um,
passion.
Yes, yes. I think so. It's yeah, and you just want to let it out. It's just burns up inside and it's got to come out. And yeah, I think
Hmm.
rambling is the
Hmm.
perfect demonstration of that. Um, as we ramble about rambling.
Yes.
Um, but no, I think that's fabulous. And as I say, it's opened so many doors and things that I want to ask about. The first of which I guess is the most important, which is aside from yourself, obviously, the other key player in this podcast and the whole point of our discussion today is the Okapi. And obviously, I've said it's one of my favorites. I think I've talked about it on at least 10 episodes of the podcast in reference to one thing or another. But listeners might not know what an Okapi is because they're quite bizarre, unusual animals. So I wondered, for anyone who's listening and going, a what? Could you tell them just a little bit more about what is an Okapi?
Absolutely. So I love talking about Okapi. Okapi, Okapi. It is
hmm
the closest living relative to the giraffe. It's often called the forest giraffe, although
hmm
evolutionarily speaking, it is quite older than the giraffe. And it looks similar to a chocolate brown horse. It has the body of a horse. It's an ungulate, so it's a hooved animal. It has
hmm
two hooves on each foot. It looks like a chocolate brown horse with white stripes on its rear, on its butt,
hmm
on its behind, and on its legs. And if you have the fortunate opportunity to ever pet them at a zoo or related institution or facility, they have a very soft, velvety feel. They feel like velvet,
hmm
and they exude kind of like a brown oil on your fingers. And so that is thought to be some sort of waterproofing in the rainforest, and also potentially an insect deterrent. But they are the closest living relative to the giraffe. They're a dark,
hmm
velvety, chocolate brown color with white stripes on their behind.
Mm. Yes, and they're so charismatic. There's something about them,
Hmm.
and I feel like I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me certainly one of the things that I find just the most wonderful about them is they have these big kind of round eyes and these big long
Hmm.
tongues that like they just like have these goofy big features which are so
Hmm.
like they're just instantly endeared to you whenever you see one. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's the same for you. You're just
Oh,
like instantly,
absolutely.
yeah. hmm
They are endearing.
hmm
And they have all these unique features, so that makes them very specially adapted to the
hmm
rainforest. They're very, very secretive. They're very
hmm
mysterious. They've been known by local people in the Democratic Republic of Congo for millennia.
hmm
But they were only recently discovered by Western scientists in 1901. They were one of the last major mammals discovered by Western scientists.
hmm
And it's because they're incredibly adapted to the dense, lush rainforest environment that they're very, very secretive. They
hmm
have big ears, so they'll hear you before you hear them, and they'll go and run and flee and hide. And then they also communicate through infrasound with each other. And so they
hmm
send sound waves to communicate to each other below the hearing of humans, below the hearing of their predators of leopards. And so they have all these incredible adaptations that allow them to
hmm
live very well within the dense rainforests.
That's it's just yeah, and for listeners, like you very helpfully spelled it out for you. If you're having trouble picturing this, go and have a Google, have a look, see what you can find pictures of an okapi because they're
Hmm.
fabulous and like yeah, the description has been pretty bang on. But like
Hmm.
if you're still having that little bit of trouble picturing just what we're describing, because especially with like the relation to a giraffe, I think people would immediately go
Hmm.
long neck. But they don't
Hmm.
have that. They're kind of that a lot more, as you said, horse shaped. They're a lot
Hmm.
kind of smaller. They kind of yeah are you can see the relation kind of in I think it's most obvious I guess in the head with the
In the
tongue and then
skull, absolutely,
yes.
absolutely, yeah. When I worked at a zoo, every time I walked by the Okapi exhibit, everyone
hmm
always thought they were related to the zebra,
hmm
which I guess that's part of the zoo's fault for putting them right next to the zebras.
Yep.
But they always associate the stripes as
hmm
related to the zebra, but in fact they're more closely related to the giraffe, and you can see that in the shape of their head, the shape of their skull, the length of their tongue, and also Okapi males. The male Okapi have ossicones, those
hmm
horn-like protrusions on their skull. Male and female giraffes both have ossicones, but only the
hmm
male in Okapi has ossicones. So they have a lot of very similar similar anatomy to giraffe,
Mhm.
which makes them more closely related.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's yeah. And as someone who loved a giraffe, I think growing up, that's the one that you see on all the storybooks and in
Hmm.
the Lion King and all sorts of
Hmm.
things. That's the animal. When I eventually discovered this, which is like an even more bizarre giraffe, and
Hmm.
as listeners know, I love my bizarre animals. It was an instant like I fell in love with it. I saw it and was like,
Hmm.
yes, this is the animal for me. And I wonder, like, for you, I guess, like, there's clearly going to be fans of the Okapi listening because they'll Google
Hmm.
these things, they'll try and find
Hmm.
podcasts, they'll try
Hmm.
and find things. For them, who already were inclined to love the Okapi, who already knew maybe a little bit about it, do you have like a fun fact that's a bit like unusual, a bit more bizarre that maybe people don't know as much
Ooh,
about the
okay.
Okapi?
I know I'm friends with several Okapi keepers, and I know they
Mhm,
know this fact, but I don't know if the general public knows this fact. But I'm going to take a step back. And when I
mhm,
communicate with the public about Okapi, my first question is, "Do you know what an Okapi is?" And then I go into
mhm,
my spiel, my explanation of what an Okapi is, what it looks like, what it's related to, and
mhm,
then I immediately share some of the facts. And one of my favorite facts that I share is Okapi. Well, I guess this is going to be a combo fact, a two factor. So when a female Okapi gives birth, the
mhm,
young Okapi, the calf, is what they're called. They look like an identical image of an adult Okapi.
mhm,
They will go and hide in a nest, whether it's between buttress roots of a tree or next to a log. They'll go and find a place to hide in the
mhm,
forest, and the mother Okapi will never go to that spot. She will communicate with the Okapi calf via infrasound when it's time to feed, when it's time to eat, when
mhm,
it's time to get clean. That calf will actually, the mother will call the baby through infrasound, and the calf will leave the nest, go find the mother, nurse, and then go back to the nest. It's thought that the mother Okapi never goes back to the nest so that she doesn't leave her scent there.
mhm,
Leopards do feed on young Okapi. It's pretty hard for them to take down an adult Okapi, but they will
mhm,
feed and prey on young Okapi calves. So that's thought to be kind of an evolutionary strategy to avoid their predators. But also along those lines is the Okapi calf will not defecate, will not poop for the first 60 or so days of its life. And that's also thought to be an evolutionary strategy. So they're not giving their scent out for the
mhm.
predators to find them. So those are two of my favorite facts that I like to share with people. And it kind of blows people's minds when I tell them that they don't really poop or defecate for the first 60 or so days of their life as kind of an evolutionary strategy to not be detected by leopards.
Mhm. I was gonna say that is clearly there's the interesting nest part, which I think the
Hmm.
parents would love, but then you've also got, like, the poop fact for the
Yeah.
kids there, which I
Oh, the
love.
kids
Like,
love that fact. Yeah.
that is I can as the the educator in me, I'm like, "That's going in the bank of things that I'm
Oh,
gonna
that
definitely
yeah, that
use." Yep.
links those kids in. Yeah. Anytime
Mhm,
I give a presentation to anyone under 10, always the poop
mhm.
fact. That always gets them.
Oh yeah, every single time, and that's but genuinely really interesting as well. It's not just poop for the sake of poop. It's
Hmm.
interesting, like about kind of the nesting and hiding and
Hmm.
staying hidden, and that's so interesting because I think like a lot of animals obviously use camouflage. The young will be maybe a different color
Hmm.
than the adults, so it blends in a
Hmm.
bit differently. If you think like the baby tapir, for example, when it's got
Hmm.
that kind of like watermelon pattern,
Watermelon stripes. Hmm.
yeah. So like but I'd never heard of like something like a large mammal, I suppose, like this
Hmm.
doing something like that where it would hide because you think like they are quite you look at them and you think how would you disappear, but actually when you think about the colors and the stripes and everything, if it
Hmm.
was to stay still in one place,
Hmm.
a little okapi is going to disappear. That's really
Hmm.
fascinating if it's yeah, really
We
really good.
we
Yeah.
have an incredible camera trap video because we do some camera trapping
Mhm.
in our site, and there's a female okapi that is going away from the camera, so you can see the stripes on her butt. She's going away from the camera, and maybe 5 meters, 4 or 5 meters into the forest, she completely disappears. And it's incredible because the stripes break up their body shape, their pattern. So when the sunlight is trickling through the leaves of the forest canopy, the stripes help break up their pattern, and they completely disappear within the forest. It's amazing how it happens.
Mhm. Mhm. It's a yeah. No, that's fantastic and so interesting. And I yeah, it just endears me even more and I'm so glad you managed to think of things that like I didn't know that. So I feel like it's always nice for me having these conversations because I feel like I learn something new as well.
Hmm.
The listeners get the content obviously, but really it's the whole thing is just for me to find out cool things about my favorite animals.
You're also learning.
So yeah, that's fantastic. Really, really fantastic. Um, I guess like I suppose we've talked about how endearing they are, how wonderful they are, how unique they are, how special and bizarre in some cases, as with the poop, they can be.
Hmm.
What was it for you that made you like of all these things that we've talked about? What was it for you that made you fall in love with the Okapi? Was it one of these things, or was it an experience you had? Like where did this love come from for you?
I think mine developed over time, to be honest, because
Hmm.
I had always known what an okapi was. I didn't really
Hmm.
know interesting facts about them. Growing up, I was always I always felt like an outcast in
Hmm.
school. I didn't really, it sounds interesting, but I didn't really have much of a social life in school. Later in
Hmm.
school, maybe in university, I did. But I always felt a little bit like an outcast. And
Hmm.
I've always felt that okapi was also a similar, misunderstood.
Hmm.
People always got confused around Okapi. They didn't really
Hmm.
understand what they were, or that they were. People always thought they were a hybrid of animals. So they
Hmm.
people always think that they're different, and
Hmm.
I always related to that. And so when I was working at a zoo, I had the chance to work with Okapi. My
Hmm.
first day on the job at the zoo, they took me to meet an Okapi, and that was his name was Camacho. I will always remember he was the first Okapi that I ever met, and that kind of solidified my
Hmm.
love for him. And then it just so happened that we were supporting the Okapi Conservation Project at the time. So then I started talking with the president of the project at the time, and that led to a relationship and eventually evolved into a position where I could work to help protect them.
That's fantastic, and it just goes to show, like, just talk to people, have these conversations about weird animals you
Hmm.
love, and look where
Hmm.
you can end up being like
Yeah.
involved in
It
in their
works.
protection.
It
Yeah,
works.
genuinely, yeah.
Hmm.
Just go out there and yeah, another one for the ramblers. Go and ramble at someone who seems like they're
Hmm.
interested in what you're saying, and it can get you to a wonderful place.
Hmm.
That's so fantastic, and I guess that's the classic kind of story, I guess, of like people find things that they relate to and then they love them and
Hmm.
then they one thing like they end up yeah, especially in the world of conservation, I feel like everybody has those animals they
Hmm.
relate to, and I feel like yeah, it's so wonderful that you found that and they're actively
Hmm.
working on probably like when you Google Okapi, the leading kind
Hmm.
of, or I don't know, only leading. I think maybe the one of the top ones that comes up whenever you Google for Okapi
Hmm.
conservation. So that's it's really fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, I guess that leads
Hmm.
nicely, I suppose, onto the project itself because we've kind of talked about
Hmm.
the animal you're protecting, but we haven't really talked, I guess,
Hmm.
about what it needs protection from. I suppose, like
From.
it's yeah, yeah, the key part of the work that you do. It's as much as
Hmm.
we'd like to sit and watch or observe and research animals all day, there is other work that needs to be done,
Hmm.
which is about its kind of conservation and protection. And so yeah, I
Hmm.
guess moving slightly onto I guess a more serious topic. We've had
Hmm.
our laughs, but I guess like yeah, the more serious topic of what are some of the threats to this amazing creature?
The I guess the main threat to Okapi, as it stands, the biggest threat
Hmm.
is loss of habitat through several means, through slash and
Hmm.
burn farming, which
Yeah.
is when people will cut down the forest, plant their crops, and those crops take all the nutrients out, and then the next season they do the same thing, and then they're slowly
Hmm.
encroaching into Okapi habitat. Um, another big threat to loss of habitat is illegal gold mining,
Hmm.
because they're also cutting down the forest along the rivers and all throughout the rainforest to get to the gold in the ground. DR Congo is a very resource rich country
Hmm.
as far as resources that humans are interested in exploiting. And so they're trying to extract a lot of those resources to supply the international demand.
Hmm.
And then also illegal logging, logging through just for
Hmm.
timber. Those are the three big threats that cause the loss of habitat. But most recently, there's been a new threat where okapi have started to be poached. Okapi
Hmm.
are previously and still are relatively respected. They are the cultural symbol of the Democratic Republic of Congo. They're the symbol of conservation. on the ICC and EcoGuard, the patrol force that patrols the forest that we work very closely with. On their patch is an Okapi, and their level of ranking is the number of Okapi heads on their patches. So they're very well respected. There's a lot of businesses named after Okapi, but recently, because they are so protected and are so rare, that there is a very high demand on the black market for a lot of their skin and parts. And so we're working with local NGOs to investigate this. This is an emerging trend, and so we're leading some investigations to explore where's the demand, where are they poaching the okapis from, what area of the country, and how are they getting to these demand countries where they're wanting those parts. And so this is a relatively new development within the past couple of years. And so we're working very closely with partners and local NGOs to explore this and get to the bottom of it and get more information. But yeah, and we have programs that try and address a lot of these threats. A lot of our programs are centered around the loss of rainforest, which not only harms Okapi, but it also harms the other animals that live in the forest, and it also affects the rest of the world, because the rainforests of the Congo Basin are a huge carbon sink. They absorb a lot of the carbon emissions that are spread into our ozone, and it helps clean the air of the world. And so we want to protect this forest as much as possible. But now we're investigating the threats of poaching, and we want to develop some programs to help mitigate that issue.
No, that's really, really interesting. Really interesting. And like, yeah, there's so many things there that I kind of want to pick up on, and so many things that like, there's so many questions.
There's a lot of information there.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, okay, now, so I could ask about this, or I could ask about that, or I could ask about, but no, there's so many questions. And like, I guess if we go back a little bit to the first kind of main point, I guess, which was the kind of so yeah, we had there's so many that I'm thinking about. So we had there
they have
was
a lot of threats.
Trafficking, deforestation was kind of the big one that you talked about first in my brain. That was the first kind of major category that kind of sprung up. And I guess like that's kind of it's a tricky one, and obviously I'm not going to ask you to solve all these problems now, because that's like an impossible thing. And if you had all the answers, I guess like the problems would be the world would be a much better place.
I wouldn't have a job.
But yeah, I guess like that kind of is really interesting, and kind of a hard one, I guess, to tackle, because it doesn't just revolve around kind of the animal itself and protecting the animal. It revolves around communities around the animal, and kind of, and especially I guess there must be such interesting dynamics, because it is this symbol of the country, as you say. Like, how do you go about, is it kind of, how does the project work in that aspect? Do you guys, you said about education, try and talk to people about the Okapi and what they're doing, and try and kind of like work with local communities to protect it? Is that kind of the gist of how you would
absolutely
go about...
to go into a little bit more detail, we need to find solutions that not only benefit Okapi but also benefit the people that live in this region too, because this is one of the most impoverished areas of the world. And so these people, they're just living their lives, and they want to feed themselves and feed their families and provide for their families. They need the basics to be able to survive and live. And so we need to find mitigation measures, ways to help not only improve their livelihoods, but also ways that protect the forest. And so we have one of our most popular programs is our agroforestry program, which is where we provide tree seedlings and food seeds to the communities that lengthen the life of their soil. They're allowed to plant the crops that they need to feed their families. But the strategies that we use, we distribute nitrogen fixing trees, which put nutrients back into the plots of land. So when they're planting diverse rows of crops, they are lengthening the life of their soil, so they can stay on the same plot of land for up to 10 years. And as long as they keep doing these practices, they can stay on that same plot of land So they're not encroaching into the forest, but they're also increasing their crop yields. They're increasing the
Mm-hmm.
amount of food that they can produce to feed their families. And if they have even more, they can sell the surplus to other people in the community to generate an additional income for their families. And so it's kind of a win-win for the families that we're trying to support, the communities that we're trying to support. They're not having to go further into the forest, further away from their families, further into danger because the forest is dangerous. There are several armed groups in the eastern Congo,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not as dangerous if they stay closer to their plot of land, to their house, um, and through that, they're not cutting down additional forest, which is critical Okapi
Mm-hmm.
habitat. And so we're seeing huge returns on investment with this, a lot of involvement with the community. We're helping thousands of people every single year provide food
Mm-hmm.
for their families, but also protecting the forest. And
Mm-hmm.
so agroforestry is one of my favorite programs. It's one of the most successful programs that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But by providing for the community, providing this benefit for the community, they see it as a benefit. It also opens up the discussion for how we can further protect the forest. Why we're
Mm-hmm.
doing this program. We're not only doing this program to help the people, but we're also doing this program to help their national animal, the okapi,
Mm-hmm.
which they do have a strong affinity for. And we've had several issues where people will have okapi come into their plot of land. We have had some where they eat some of their crops.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of being mad at the okapi for eating the crops, they'll actually they get excited that they have an okapi coming onto their land. It's a special,
Mm-hmm.
a symbolic thing, and it's very special to them. And so we're seeing the benefits of this program. And we started that program, oh gosh, 22 years ago, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
is 2001 is when we started this program. Now I dated your podcast if people watch it later. Um, but yeah, that's one of our most popular programs is our agroforestry program that kind of addresses the two issues that we're working with. We're
Mm-hmm.
facing food security, people having access to food, but we're also addressing the loss of habitat issue.
Mhm. That's really fascinating, and it's the tension roller coaster you put me through with like the whenever somebody says an animal came onto somebody else's land, I think as a conservationist, everybody tenses up in the room and goes, "Oh no!" Because when it's
Mhm,
elephants or when it's the things that come and they like, and for example, an elephant would kind of like bulldoze
mhm,
through a field of crops really
mhm.
quickly, and just like
Yeah.
a group of elephants would take. It does make you nervous because, like, obviously, in a lot of places, those relations become strained and there's all the kind of
Mhm,
implications of that. But it's
mhm,
it's it's actually nice to hear a story where, oh, actually, this is a they are seen as like a benefit almost of like, yeah, this is
mhm,
a wonderful
mhm,
thing to see, and it's nice that like that is a thing that people actually enjoy seeing because it's sometimes I feel like people like to see humans and animals as separate bubbles, but when we can work in
mhm,
this place that actually they
mhm,
come together, that's really nice. And yeah, a great story. And I guess
mhm.
like as well with agroforestry is really interesting to me because I, aside from my work at a zoo, I also work in a botanic garden, and so when it comes to like forestry things,
Mhm.
the nitrogen into the soil, like that whole storyline is
Yep.
so interesting to me. And obviously, like alongside the okapi, that will benefit all sorts of other animals, birds that
Mhm,
nest in the tree, like all sorts of other things. So it's a really wonderfully non. Even though your organization, I guess, is targeted on okapi, like that's the thing that you're focused on.
mhm,
It's nice that the project is not, oh, we're just focusing on okapi. It will have such
mhm,
positive impacts on other things. That's so
mhm,
interesting. Um, I guess
mhm.
then,
And
like,
what
oh,
I've learned
sorry.
in the sorry, what I've learned in the conservation field is that conservation is not really about the animals. It's all about the
Mhm,
people, because often people are the ones that are putting pressure, whether or not it's
mhm,
intentional, putting pressure on the environment. And so people are going to be the solution to these issues that we're seeing.
mhm,
And so it's finding those mitigation measures, those balances, that almost
mhm,
collaboration or cooperation between humans and the environment, and knowing that we aren't separate. It's not
mhm,
siloed. It's not humans and the environment. We do need
mhm.
to figure out a way to find that cooperation and that balance between everything.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree any more with what you're saying. So I'm just listeners can't
Mhm.
see, but I'm just sat here nodding like yes, yep. No, that's it's really really interesting and really like really wonderful to hear that's such a big success. I guess like then as we were talking there about the human kind of interaction and element there, is that what's driving the poaching story as well? Is that kind of coming out of yeah, as you said, like
Hmm.
there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of kind of areas with low
Yeah.
income, and
Hmm.
like, so is that what's driving that? Because they see Okapi as something then that can be sold to make a profit to kind of look after their families and things. Is that what's kind of the narrative there, or is it?
Um, we're we're still in the investigations, and I don't want to
Mhm.
make any assumptions because
Yeah.
it's all we're kind of at the very beginning of the
Hmm.
investigations. But we do suspect that the demand is coming from outside of the country, and
Hmm.
so they what we suspect is that they will be or that they're offering these high dollar amounts
Hmm.
for people to poach okapi for their
Hmm.
skin and parts. And so that's kind of what we know now. I can't share too many details because I don't
Yeah.
want to,
Yeah.
because it is kind of a very initial project.
Hmm.
But we are working on investigating that and determining what the who the demanders are,
Hmm.
and who is actually doing the poaching. And we're getting some mixed stories, so it's trying to navigate those different stories and different different issues.
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. That's the one where I'm always like, whenever somebody mentions something they're just starting on, I'm like, I wish science could somehow, you could look into the future and work these things out, because there's always
Hmm.
like, oh, but no, it's,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's an interesting one, and yes, I fully agree that we shouldn't make statements before we know exactly what's going on, but
I
that's,
know, I know. I want to
yeah.
make sure it's correct first. But yeah,
Hmm.
we're hearing
Yeah.
different things from different people, and it's just trying to navigate all of those
Hmm.
communications, and we want to make sure that we're communicating it correctly. And
Hmm.
and again, this is a very relatively recent, I guess, issue that we're noticing.
Yeah.
Probably in the past just 2 or so years,
Hmm.
and it is increasing, and so we're working to figure out what's going on.
Mhm, mhm. That's really fascinating, and it's always a weird one where you're like, I look forward to hearing what you find out, in because I'm
Hmm.
intrigued to know what's going on and how we can help stop it. But you don't want to say the words "I look forward to hearing," but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like, I look forward to kind of, maybe in a few years, once you have the answers, you can come back on and we can talk about
learning more.
them then. Yes,
Hmm.
um, and I guess that kind of actually needs slightly leads nicely, I guess, onto the last thing you mentioned, which was the kind of protection of the forests of the kind of Democratic Republic of Congo, because they are, aside from the Amazon, they are another one of these huge kind of important forests, carbon
Hmm.
sinks. I wonder if, like, so for listeners, like, they probably they might not know what that means, and they might not know kind of the diversity that is held kind of
Hmm.
within this forest. Could you, like, do explain a little bit about what you mean, a little bit more about that? Like, what kind of species are in there that, like, protecting the okapi in the forest? Like, what other things benefit
Oh
from
gosh, yes.
that?
So
In the
the
briefest way, because I
the
feel like
rainforest of
that's a
the
big question.
yeah, in the briefest way, yeah, because I could talk about this for hours. The Congo Basin rainforest, behind the Amazon, or after the Amazon, is the
Mhm,
largest continuous tract of forest. But the Amazon is being lost incredibly fast,
mhm,
faster than the Congo Basin rainforests are, and so soon this could potentially be the largest remaining rainforest.
mhm,
Continuous rainforest in the world, but it's incredibly diverse. DR Congo is arguably the most biodiverse country in all of Africa. I think
mhm,
South Africa kind of rivals it in numbers of species, but they have a lot more plant species. But there's something in Eastern Congo, I think there's something like 13 species of primates. There's an incredible diversity of birds that are endemic to DR Congo. There's mammals that are endemic to DR Congo. The
mhm,
bonobo is only found in DR Congo. The okapi is only found in DR Congo. And I think there's over 600 or 900 different species of butterflies. And there's a butterfly season every year where there's
mhm,
millions of butterflies just flying along um, our station along that's on the Upulu River. And you're just swarmed by all of these butterflies. And on the mud flats of the river, there's just millions, and you walk through them and they flush up. There's millions and millions of butterflies. There's an incredible amount of diversity here that needs to be protected through protecting the forest. And so that is kind of what
mhm,
our motive is, what our goal is we're using the okapi as an umbrella species. And that is a
mhm,
species that Um, we use kind of the face of the okapi to protect the entire rainforest that
Mhm.
benefits not only okapi, but also all of the other species that are found within the rainforest. And because people have that strong respect and cultural connection to okapi, people are more likely to protect the forest for okapi, which then in turn benefits the rest of the species that share its same habitat.
Mhm, mhm. That's fantastic. And like, yes, when you think about that just that number of butterflies, like that is like worth protect. Like, do you know, like when you could have stopped there, like with just that example, I would have gone. That is enough of a justification to want to protect these forests. Never mind, like that. I mean, bonobos, fascinating. Like it all adds up to make this beautiful, unique, bizarre picture. It's so fantastic.
I have
Like
a massive this I have a well behind me I have a massive butterfly identification book that is just in two provinces in eastern Congo is just all the species, and it's oh gosh, what is that, inch and a half, 2 inches, what is that,
mhm.
3-4 centimeters thick of just butterflies in two of the provinces that are in DR Congo. It's insane how many butterflies are there.
That's I struggle sometimes to flick through my like garden birds book that I have for the limited number of species of birds that fly around in my back garden. Never mind going, okay, well, like we need to ID one of these 600 butterflies or whatever it is. Like that's fascinating. Really, really fascinating. And yeah, I can see why. Yeah, even the more I talk to you, the more I'm like, I can see exactly why he wants to like work with the Okapi and in this area of the world. Like so enchanting and just magical. Um,
Mhm.
I guess we've kind of touched on a couple things there. Is there any other projects that we kind of haven't talked about in terms of your work that you'd like to touch on briefly? Like any of the conservation education parts that we haven't talked about? Like what are the other things like that you're
Sure. Well,
proud
we
of?
really only
Mhm.
talked about one of our three
I
pillars.
was gonna
We
say.
only have a couple minutes left. So that another one of our pillars. So we work in three pillars. We work
Yeah.
in wildlife protection, which I guess we did talk a little bit about that. Wildlife protection, community assistance, and conservation education. We talked a
Mhm.
lot about community assistance. We got into our agroforestry program. We also have an incredibly strong women's empowerment program, providing
Mhm.
women a larger and louder voice within the community by providing income for their families, alternative sources of income, and a way to kind of work together to bring each other up.
Mhm.
Um, and we also work with the indigenous Mabuti that have been living in the forest with Okapi for 40,000 years. And so we work very closely with them. They help us with camera trapping. We help them by providing a stronger voice in the community,
Mhm.
working very closely with them, providing for them what they need for their families.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's community assistance. With wildlife protection, we work under a contract of collaboration. This is getting a little
Mhm.
technical with ICCN EcoGuards. So that ICCN is the Institute in Congo for the Conservation of Nature. In French, it's Institut Congolais pour la Conservation de la Nature. ICCN is what for short. And that is the government authority tasked with protecting the country's protected areas.
Mhm.
14% of DR Congo's land mass is under some protected status. And so they are the government authority that works to protect all of these areas. And we work closely under a contract of collaboration with ICCN in order to conduct all of our activities.
Mhm.
And we support the rangers whenever whether they need additional rations or healthcare. We also provide healthcare for all the staff of the Okapi Wildlife Reserve. I do need to mention that the Okapi Wildlife Reserve is run under a co-management unit between the Wildlife Conservation Society (WCS), based out of New York,
Mhm.
and ICCN, and we operate all of our programs under that management structure.
Mhm.
Um, and so we provide healthcare for all of the WCS, ICCN, and all of our staff and their
Mhm.
families, because we need to make sure that the staff that are protecting the reserve maintain good health.
Mhm.
And so healthcare is a critical need in the region. And so we provide that healthcare for the staff to continue protecting. So that's wildlife protection. We talked a little bit about the poaching and addressing that threat under wildlife protection. I talked about community assistance, agroforestry, women's groups, working with indigenous communities. And then conservation education is another strong pillar that we have. And that we have several educators that are stationed around the reserve and inside of the reserve
Mm-hmm.
that go to primary schools, secondary schools, universities, and they're doing presentations on in education opportunities and different education things to talk about the importance of protecting the forest, because we need to develop a passion and an interest
Mm-hmm.
of the forest and conservation at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
instill these practices, instill these ideals at a very young age so they can grow up and still have an understanding of the important role that humans play in protecting the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And we also work very closely with local governments um, and providing education opportunities for them to kind of teach them this is why we need to continue protecting the Okapi Wildlife Reserve. This is why we need to continue investing in supporting communities that benefit them and the forest, and why we need to continue investing in conservation education. So it's kind of a very well-rounded program,
Mm-hmm.
all centered around community support and community cooperation, community trust. Trust is a huge issue in the conservation field. We've been working in this region for over 35 years with a consistent presence, consistent staff that are still there. And so people recognize us, people trust us, and that's helped us in several situations, in several dangerous situations where the community has come through and provided support for us, helped get us out of any difficult situations. And so it's kind of a very strong collaboration between our organization and staff and the communities and the local authorities and the Okapi Wildlife Reserve management. And so it's the collaboration is there, the cooperation is there. We just have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of struggles to overcome, a lot of threats to overcome for Okapi. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we just keep moving. There's always hope. There's always a little glimmer of hope. The communities want this. The communities keep us motivated. You see it when you visit. When I'm there, I see it. The smiles on the community's faces. They love Okapi. They love our organization, and they want peace and security. They want food security, and so it's a pleasure to continue this work. And I think it's a fantastic place.
Mm-hmm. That's I couldn't have asked, because I asked you an impossible question there, and I couldn't have asked for a more perfect answer to that, because I asked you basically, oh, sum up your entire mission, because we've only had this was about 6 podcasts worth of content there that I need to
Mhm.
go away and think about. But that's so fascinating and so hopeful and so fantastic. And yeah, so interesting. And I think there's so much there for the listeners to go away and dig into and
Mhm.
get their teeth into and go onto websites and stuff and really go and learn more about. And I think there's so many points that you made there about trust and working with communities and education and all of these things that are such core tenets of conservation that everybody should go and yeah, go and learn more about. That's so fantastic, so fantastic, and so interesting. And I think actually kind of rounds out the Okapi conversation and
It is a little bit
conversation
of a
and
tongue twister.
conservation are two words that are too close together.
Oh
Rounds out the
yeah,
conversation about Okapi so nicely. And I think, yeah, it makes me, yeah, you're going to have to come on another time because I have 100 more questions now. But
absolutely. I know. I know. We didn't have much time to talk today. We'll have to schedule another one.
I know, but yes, today I guess that is us kind of wrapping up. We have kind of, as I've said, listeners, I'm so sorry we couldn't talk for longer, but yes, I guess that moves us on to a couple just quick fire type last minute questions that I like to ask every guest this series, because I think we're celebrating the continent of Africa and all of its diversity and all of its wonderful things, and we've got episodes centered around all sorts of bizarre species. So I wanted to ask a bonus species that we can mention here. Like, if you had to pick another species that is bizarre or interesting or strange, you can't pick the okapi. What would be your favorite
Okay.
bizarre, weird African species?
Oh, are you putting? Oh, now you're saying. Well, I guess they're not bizarre. I do have a
Okay.
very strong passion for sea turtles. That's
I
my
mean,
other
that's
love.
excellent. I mean, they're a little bizarre.
It's not a bizarre or weird animal, and they're in Africa. That still counts. They're in Africa. I've actually been working with sea turtles longer than okapi, um, but I still okapi and sea turtles are my passion. They're what is on my mind all the time. My wife gets frustrated because I have so many Okapi and sea turtle things around the house. And whenever people see sea turtle stuff or Okapi stuff, they always get it for me as a gift. I swear I have the largest collection of Okapi
Mhm.
themed and sea turtle themed shirts in the world. Probably not sea turtle in the world, but Okapi for sure. I have the largest collection of different Okapi shirts than anyone in the world. But yeah, my house is filled with Okapi and sea turtles. My office is filled with mostly Okapis. I don't think I have any sea turtles in the office, but yeah, that would be 100% my other favorite animal is sea turtles, all
Mhm.
species.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I feel like you've not made it in conservation until there's somebody that all of your friends, as an animal that's all of your friends and family associate with you and have to buy all of the merchandise
Yes.
for you.
Uh huh.
I think
Uh huh.
that's a true sign that you've made it as a conservationist.
Yeah.
No, that's the perfect answer because no one's mentioned a marine species yet when I've asked them, so that's a good choice.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, we've had everyone's somehow mentioned a different one, but not
Hmm.
a marine one yet. So that's
And they're
wonderful.
still an African species because sea turtles do nest on the coasts of
Hmm.
Africa.
Hmm.
Still
I
counts.
think perfect, perfect. We're extending the boundary now, and I like that. We can
Yeah.
see how far we can get. No, that's wonderful. And I guess then the last question I have is if people are intrigued by okapis or sea turtles, I guess, and want to learn more or kind of want to do a little bit more for conservation, what would your piece of advice be for them if they're feeling inspired?
If they're feeling inspired, well, first I'm going to tell you to visit our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On Facebook, it's
Yeah.
Okapi Conservation Project, and on Instagram, it's Okapi Conservation, and on Twitter, it's Okapi Project. Or if you just search our full name, it'll come up on all of them. And our website is www.okapiconservation.org. And we have several ways that you can support protecting Okapi. That's a very common question that we get, and it's often
Mhm.
difficult to find ways to connect people that are across oceans, how they can
Yeah.
help protect forests in Congo for Okapi. The easiest way is to help support our project. But then also one of the biggest hurdles that we have is communicating that the Okapi exist and that they're their own unique species.
Mhm.
Often people think when they go to a zoo, they think that it's a hybrid of two different animals, but no, it is its own unique species that is incredibly endangered and needs protecting. And so that's one of the biggest hurdles is just communicating that Okapi are out there because people can't or won't protect what they don't know exists.
Mhm.
And if they don't learn about them, if they don't share or know about the incredibly unique facts about Okapi that the calves don't poop for the first 60 days of their life, where they communicate through infrasound. And this is an incredibly unique species that we need to work to protect. And also, we need to work to protect the communities that are sharing the forest home with these
Mhm.
incredible species. I always tell interviewers or interview when I'm being interviewed that anyone my age or older usually does not know what an okapi is, but my age and younger, usually children do know what an okapi is because they've
Mhm.
been to a zoo, they've seen the lion guard, which has an okapi in it. And people, the younger children, I noticed that um, they know what an okapi is, and usually it's one of their favorite animals because
Mhm.
it's so unique. It's such a unique animal, and I think that's why we've really benefited from zoos. Here's a little zoo plug. We've benefited from zoos because the only place that you can see okapi is in zoos. Congo is an incredibly difficult country to travel to.
Mhm.
In Eastern Congo, it's not safe for tourists. At the moment, it used to be, and we're hoping that tourism does open to the region soon. And so you can't see them in the wild. And even if you do make it into the country, the odds of actually seeing them in the wild is pretty much zero.
Mhm.
The founder of the Okapi Conservation Project has been working in Congo for 35 years. He's never seen one in the wild. And so they're incredibly difficult to see in the wild because they're
Mhm.
very secretive. But we have relied on zoos to help get our message out there, communicate our message about the Okapi, and that's brought a lot of awareness to the issues that Okapi face, and that's helped us tremendously. And so that's what people can do around the world. If you visit your local zoo, odds are that they support our project, and a lot of their
Mhm.
funding comes from their admissions. So buying a ticket to that zoo, we would get a portion of that support in the long run. And if you just tell family, tell friends
Mhm.
about Okapi, just be that passion, be that rambler, that passionate
Mhm.
rambler talking about Okapi, and then people will learn, and people will become aware, and people will be motivated to support.
Mm. That's that's the perfect answer to that question. You've got the plug of the website in, you've got the practical advice people can follow, the zoo plug, the everything.
Hmm.
Nailed it. And I think that will give so many people options to support what, as you said, is quite a difficult animal sometimes to work out how can I help it. So that's absolutely fabulous and so wonderful. And yeah, thank you so much for all of that information and all of your time and thoughts, because I feel like I've learned so much in the last, like, it's only been an hour and I feel like my brain's about to explode with all this new information. I can't wait to go and be an even more rambly person the next time I go and see an Okapi somewhere, because I
About
rambled
Okapi.
before now.
Perfect. I
You've
love it. I love it.
No, yeah, you've made me even worse now. I'm just going to stand by them all day and talk to people about them. No, that's fantastic. And thank you so much for your time. I guess I'll put, for listeners who are intrigued, I'll put links to all of the things that you mentioned in the description of the episode so they can go down there and click on them and they'll be taken right there. So that's easy for them. And of course, while they're down there, they can find all of our social media as well. So while they're going and looking at all of the Okapi related wonders and things, they can also go down there, find us at Pangolin Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Show us some love. You can also follow me on social media at the Only Jack Baker on Instagram and at Only Jack Baker on Twitter. And yes, you can subscribe, of course, to the podcast wherever you're listening. Leave us a nice review. Do all of that fun podcasty related stuff. And yeah, I guess all that remains is for me to say a huge thank you to you, Lucas. It's been absolutely fascinating. I wish we had hours and hours and hours to sit here and ramble on about okapis, because I could easily for days. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for all of the work that you and your organization do to protect, as I say, one of my favorite animals. And I'm sure the listeners, one of their new favorite animals, if they weren't a fan already. Like, thank you so, so
They better
much.
be. Well, thank you so much, Jack. It has been an extreme pleasure for me. Thank you for arranging this, and I'm glad that we were able to finally coordinate an interview. I know we went back and forth with difficulties with Wi-Fi and connection and finding a time. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and that we can share our shared love of Okapi with all of your
Yes.
listeners. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thank you so, so much. And I guess on that note, thank you so much, listeners, for listening. And until next time, goodbye, everyone.